I walked into my own house and I immediately knew something was wrong. The lights were off. The air was heavy. And the silence? It wasn't peaceful. It was wrong. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor as I stepped further inside, the echo bouncing off the walls like a warning. I should have turned around. I should have left. But instead, I opened the bedroom door. And what I saw, I still see it when I close my eyes. Every single night. Let me take you back. Because this story didn't start that night. It started months before, when everything still seemed perfect. My name is Jessica Cole. I'm 32 years old and I live in a nice little house just outside Denver, Colorado. I used to think I had it all. A stable job in marketing, a close circle of girlfriends, and a husband, Tyler, who I thought was my forever. We'd been married for 5 years. No kids by choice. We wanted to travel, build a life first. And we did. Greece, Spain, Bali. We had those perfect Instagram photos. You know, the kind, matching outfits, sunset kisses, champagne breakfasts. But pictures lie. Oh God, how they lie. I remember the first time I felt it. That shift. We were at dinner. A small Italian place we loved. Tyler was on his phone again. I reached for his hand. He pulled away. I laughed. Work again. He nodded. Yeah. Sorry. Big campaign rollout Monday. But something in his eyes didn't match the words. He wasn't stressed. He looked nervous. I ignored it. Because that's what you do when you're in love, right? You trust. A few weeks later, he started coming home later. Late meetings. Client dinners. Traffic. And then the cologne changed. That part still haunts me. He always wore blue de Chanel. Always. I used to bury my face in his shirts just to breathe it in. But one night, I hugged him and I smelled something different. Lighter. Floral. Feminine. I asked. He shrugged. Used a friend's spray after the gym. Left mine at home. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. Because facing the truth would have meant losing everything I knew. But the truth doesn't care what you believe. One Friday night, Tyler said he was going to a networking event. It didn't sit right. I told him I had dinner plans with my friend, Melissa. That was a lie. I needed to think. Alone. But something told me to drive by the event. So I did. Only there was no event. The building was dark. No cars. No people. Nothing. My heart dropped. I called him. Hey babe, how's the event? He said, great. Loud music, lots of people. I'll be home late. I looked at the empty building. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just drove home. And when I got there, his car was in the driveway. He was already home. I stood there in the dark for a minute. Hands shaking. Breathing hard. Something primal in me knew. I walked inside. The silence screamed. And when I opened that door, I saw my husband in bed. With someone else. And it wasn't a woman. He didn't see me at first. Neither of them did. I just stood there. Frozen. Staring. My mouth was open but no sound came out. My body was screaming but my mind couldn't catch up. I felt like I was drowning in slow motion. And there he was. Tyler. The man I married. The man who held my hand at our wedding and swore forever. In our bed. With a man. The sheets were tangled. The air was thick. Their clothes were scattered across the floor like broken promises. And then he saw me. Jessica. His voice cracked. He scrambled to pull the blanket over himself like modesty suddenly mattered. The other guy, young, fit, tan, grabbed his shirt and bolted past me, not even looking me in the eye. Like I was some kind of ghost. Maybe I was. Because in that moment I didn't feel real anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just asked one question. How long? He stared at me. His lips trembled. His face went pale. Jessica, I was going to tell you. How long? I was shaking now. Rage and heartbreak twisting inside me like a storm. He looked down. A year. A year. 365 days. Of lies. Of pretending. Of faking love. While I was out here planning anniversaries and couples vacations, he was sneaking around with him. I laughed. Loud. Bitter. The kind of laugh that doesn't come from joy, it comes from the edge of a cliff. A year, Tyler? A whole damn year. And you couldn't even tell me. He stepped forward, hands out like he was trying to calm me down. Like he was the victim here. I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt me? I snapped. You've been lying to my face for a year. Sleeping next to me. Kissing me. Pretending to love me. You think this didn't hurt? Silence. I could hear the wall clock ticking. My own breath shaking. My heart pounding like it was trying to break out of my chest. He whispered, I didn't mean for this to happen. I stared at him. Really stared. And for the first time I saw it. The distance. The coldness. The truth. He didn't mean for me to find out. Not yet. Maybe not ever. This wasn't some brave coming out story. This wasn't him finally being honest. This was a coward who got caught. I walked past him. Into the closet. Pulled a suitcase from the top shelf. He watched me, eyes wide, lips trembling. Jess, please. Don't. Don't what? Leave? You already left, Tyler. A long time ago. I didn't even pack much. I didn't care. I just needed to breathe. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and walked out the door. He followed me to the porch. It was just sex at first, he blurted. I didn't even know I was gay. I thought it was a phase, but it wasn't. I turned around and said the words I never thought I'd say to the man I married. I hope you find yourself, Tyler, but you don't get to find yourself at my expense anymore. Then I got in the car and drove straight into the unknown. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Through the suburbs. Onto the highway. Past the city limits. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because if I stopped, it would hit me all at once, and I wasn't ready to feel it yet. I ended up at a cheap motel an hour outside Denver. $59 a night. The kind of place with flickering lights and stains on the carpet. But I didn't care. It had 4 walls and a lock. That was enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. My phone buzzed. Tyler. I turned it off. I couldn't hear his voice. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I laid down, still in my clothes, and stared at the ceiling until morning. The next few days were a blur. I called out sick from work. Told my boss I had a family emergency. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I avoided my friends. Ignored texts. I couldn't explain this to anyone. Not yet. Not while it was still raw. But the silence, it was killing me. So I did what any heartbroken woman does. I called Melissa. My best friend since college. The one person who'd always had my back. She answered on the first ring. Jess? Oh my God. Where the hell have you been? I've been texting you like crazy. Her voice cracked something in me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke. Right there on the phone. Sobbing so hard I could barely speak. She drove out that night. Brought takeout, a bottle of wine, and the biggest hug I've ever felt. I told her everything. Every ugly, painful detail. And when I finished, she didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say it'll be okay. She said you didn't deserve that. Not 1 second of it. I cried again. But this time it felt like something released. The next week was survival mode. I found an Airbnb. Packed the rest of my things while Tyler was at work. Didn't say a word. Just left the keys on the counter. He texted. He called. He emailed. Long, desperate messages. Apologies. Explanations. He said he was seeing a therapist. That he was exploring who he really was. Good for him. But that wasn't my journey to carry anymore. What hurt most wasn't that he was gay. It was the lies. He could have told me. He could have spared me the betrayal, the cheating, the humiliation. But he didn't. He let me fall in love with someone who never truly existed. And now, I had to figure out who I was without him. One night, I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started writing. Not a journal. Not a blog. A letter. To myself. Dear Jessica, you are not broken. You are not stupid. You are not unlovable. You were lied to. And that pain is real. But it does not define you. You will survive this. You will rise. You will be okay. I read it every morning. Like a mantra. And little by little, I started to believe it. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was after. It was waking up alone and instinctively reaching for someone who wasn't there. It was walking into a grocery store and realizing I didn't know how to shop just for me. It was hearing a joke and thinking Tyler would have loved that before remembering he wasn't mine anymore. It was the echo of a life that was supposed to be forever. And the worst echo of all? The shame. Because even though I did nothing wrong, I felt like a fool. Like I missed every sign. Like I was blind. Like I wasn't enough woman for my husband to love. That thought haunted me. I knew it wasn't logical. I knew sexuality wasn't about me. But still, it crept in late at night when the world was quiet and the self-doubt got loud. What did I miss? Was I not passionate enough? Did he ever even want me? The questions burned. Until one night, Melissa came over again. We drank, we laughed, and then she said something that hit me like a truck. You realize he didn't just cheat on you, right? She said. He robbed you of your choice. That's the betrayal. And just like that, it clicked. She was right. He didn't just sleep with someone else. He built an entire lie, trapped me inside it, and called it love. He took away my right to know the truth. to make choices for myself, to walk away if I wanted. He made me the side character in his coming out story. And that realization, it made me angry. Not the quiet, aching kind of sad anger I'd been sitting in. Real, hot, righteous anger. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I posted my story online. Not to shame him. Not to get revenge. But because I needed to stop hiding. I needed to rip off the mask and breathe again. The post went viral. Hundreds of comments, messages, emails, from women and men who had gone through the same thing. People told me I was brave, that my words helped them leave toxic marriages, that they finally felt seen. And for the first time in months, I felt powerful. A few days later, I got an email from Tyler. A short one. I saw the post. I know you hate me. I probably deserve it. But I want you to know. I'm sorry. And I'm proud of you. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. He was part of my story, but he didn't get to own it anymore. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I wasn't broken anymore either. I signed the divorce papers in early fall. It was quiet. No drama. No lawyers. Just signatures. The end of a chapter. I walked out of that courthouse with no ring, no husband, no plan. Just me. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Fall in Colorado is breathtaking. Crisp air. Gold leaves. The kind of quiet that almost feels like healing. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, exposed brick, second floor walk-up, tiny kitchen. But it was mine. Every inch of it. I painted the walls warm tones. Hung up art that made me feel something. Burned candles that smelled like cinnamon and beginnings. I was rebuilding. Slowly. Deliberately. One night, I sat on the floor, drinking tea in my pajamas, listening to Billie Holiday on vinyl. I looked around the room and realized this was the first time I'd ever lived alone. No parents. No roommates. No husband. And I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. A few weeks later, Melissa dragged me to a wine tasting event. You need to flirt with someone, she said. Even just for fun. I rolled my eyes. I don't even know how to flirt anymore. She smirked. You've got more power than you think, Jess. You've just forgotten how to use it. I didn't believe her. Until I met Noah. He was nothing like Tyler. Tall, yes, but softer. Not in body, but in spirit. He had laugh lines. A gravelly voice. Kind eyes. We talked about everything. Books. Music. Bad tattoos. I told him about my favorite author. He told me he cried watching Coco. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. There was no pressure. No weird tension. Just connection. Pure and simple. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car. He didn't try to kiss me. He just said, "You've got this calm about you. Like someone who's been through fire and came out glowing." I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled. "Thanks. I guess I've earned that glow the hard way." He grinned. Best way to earn it. We exchanged numbers. He didn't push, didn't chase. And that was everything. I didn't date him right away. I needed space, time. But he stayed in touch. Little texts, random memes, the occasional, "Hey, how's your week?" And slowly, I started to want to reply. Not because I needed someone to fix me, but because I'd already started fixing myself. I joined a yoga studio, started therapy, went back to painting, something I hadn't done since college. I even went to a solo movie, sat in the dark with my popcorn, smiling like a lunatic, because I was living, not surviving, living. One night, a friend invited me to a small dinner party. I almost said no, but I was done hiding, so I went. Wore red lipstick, a little black dress I hadn't worn in years. And Noah was there. He looked surprised but happy. I was too. We sat across from each other all night. Talked, laughed. No expectations. No pretending. And when the night ended, he walked me to my car again. This time he asked, "Can I kiss you?" I nodded. And he did. Soft. Slow. Honest. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't movie magic. It was real. And after everything I'd been through, real was more than enough. Falling in love again after betrayal is like learning to walk after a car crash. Every step feels risky. Every touch feels like a test. But Noah, he never rushed me. Never demanded anything I wasn't ready to give. And that patience? It healed something in me I didn't even know was bleeding. We started slow. Coffee dates. Farmers markets. Lazy Sundays in his apartment. Reading separate books but sharing the same blanket. No pressure. No masks. Just presence. One morning, I woke up next to him. Sunlight pouring through the windows. His hand resting lightly on my hip. I looked at his face. Peaceful, unguarded. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like a woman holding her breath. I felt safe. But healing doesn't come without setbacks. It was our 4th month together. He invited me to a party, his sister's birthday. I said yes. I even wore a dress he'd once said made me look like sunlight bottled up. The night was lovely. Until someone mentioned marriage. Not even us, just in general. But my body froze. My heart started racing. I excused myself, went out to the patio and stared up at the stars like they could explain what the hell was happening. Noah followed a few minutes later. He didn't say anything. Just stood next to me. I panicked, I admitted. I don't know why. He looked at me soft and steady. Actually, I think you do. Tears welled up in my eyes. I thought I was over it. I thought I'd moved on. You have, he said. But moving on doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. And just like that, the tears fell. I gave him everything, Noah. My trust. My heart. My whole damn life. And he made me feel like a joke. Noah stepped closer. Brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. You weren't the joke, Jess. He was. He was scared. And he made cowardly choices. But none of that reflects on you. My chest cracked open. Because for the first time I believed it. I wasn't broken. I was betrayed. There's a difference. From that night forward, something shifted. I let Noah in more. Not just physically, but emotionally. I told him about the letter I wrote to myself. He asked to read it. I said no, but I read it to him instead. He cried. So did I. We didn't say, I love you right away. It came one night, sitting in traffic of all places. He looked at me, smiled like he'd been holding it in for years, and just said it. I love you, Jess. And this time? The words didn't feel like a promise. They felt like home. I didn't need Noah to heal me. But he reminded me what healthy love could look like. Not perfect. Not easy. But true. And after all the lies, that was the most sacred thing in the world. The thing about healing is it's not linear. Some days you feel unstoppable. Like you've conquered the storm. Other days, the smallest thing can crack you wide open. Like the day I got an email from Tyler's mother. I hadn't thought about her in months. She always liked me. Called me her bonus daughter. We used to bake together on holidays. But this email wasn't a recipe. It was an apology. Jessica, I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. I didn't know what Tyler was doing. I didn't know he was hurting you like that. You didn't deserve it. I hope life is being kind to you. I still think about you often. And I hope you're happy. Denise. I read it 3 times. It didn't make me cry. It didn't make me angry. It just hit. This woman had been family to me. And just like that gone, that was the hidden cost of betrayal. You don't just lose the person. You lose their world. Their people. Their rituals. And even when they reach back out, you don't quite fit the same way anymore. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't need to reopen that chapter. I was in a new one now. Noah invited me on a weekend trip that same week. Aspen. Cozy cabin. Hot cocoa and snow flurries. I almost said no. Old instincts. Fear of being trapped. Of something going wrong. But I reminded myself I wasn't with Tyler. I was with Noah. And so we went. We hiked in the snow. Drank mulled wine. Played old board games by the fire. Laughed until our cheeks hurt. One night, he cooked dinner while I read a book in his hoodie, feet curled beneath me on the couch. He turned down the lights, brought out a small candlelit cake. Not for a birthday. Just because it was Saturday. He said to small joys. We clinked glasses. And for the first time in years, I made a wish. Not for someone to love me. Not for the pain to disappear. I wished to never forget this moment. Because it was the quiet kind of happiness. The kind that doesn't scream or sparkle. It settles in your bones. And after the chaos I'd lived through, that kind of peace felt like freedom. We got snowed in that night. The roads were shut down. No cell service. Just us, a fireplace, and a stack of old VHS tapes someone left in the cabin. And in the silence of falling snow, curled up under 3 blankets, I whispered it back. I love you, too. He kissed my forehead and didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His arms said it all. When we got back from Aspen, something inside me had changed. Not suddenly. Not like flipping a switch. But like the final piece of a puzzle quietly clicking into place. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't trying to be someone's wife, someone's solution, someone's better half. I was whole. And that terrified me in the best way. I went back to therapy with new questions. Not, why did he cheat? Not, what did I do wrong? But, who am I now? It was wild, uncovering parts of myself I'd buried just to survive. Like the fact that I'd always wanted to open a gallery. I used to sketch constantly in college, portraits, cityscapes, raw emotional stuff. But when I got married, I put it all away. Because it didn't make money. Because marketing was more practical. Because he didn't get it. But Noah did. One night, he found my sketch pad. Sat down with it for an hour. Quiet. Focused. When he finally looked up, his eyes were glassy. You have to share this, he said. People need this. My chest tightened. It's just something I do to stay sane. He smiled. Exactly. That's what makes it real. I started small. Created an Instagram. Posted a few pieces. No pressure. No rules. And just like that, people started following. Messaging me. Asking about prints. Commissioning pieces. Within a month, I'd made more money from sketches than I ever did selling ad campaigns for brands I didn't care about. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. For me. And it felt like the universe was finally exhaling with me. Then came the email. Not from Tyler. From his boyfriend. The one I walked in on. His name was Mark. I hadn't known that before. Hadn't wanted to. But there it was in my inbox. A long, messy, gut-spilling message. Jessica, I know you have every reason to hate me. And maybe I shouldn't be reaching out at all. But I just want you to know I didn't know he was married. Not at first. He told me later. Said you were basically roommates. Said the marriage was over in everything but paperwork. I believed him. That's on me. When I found out the truth, I left him. I'm not with him anymore. I needed to say I'm sorry. I didn't want to be the villain in someone else's story. And I'm so sorry that I was. I hope you're doing better. I really do. Mark. I sat there, reading it, heart pounding in a strange, unfamiliar rhythm. Not anger. Not sadness. Closure. That final click. The last page of a book I didn't even want to read. And I realized. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. Not Tyler. Not Mark. Because forgiveness isn't about them. It's about not carrying their weight on my back anymore. I didn't reply. But I wished him peace in my heart. And then I went back to my sketch pad. And drew a woman walking away from a burning house. Not running. Not crying. Just walking. Head high. Eyes forward. Free. Life didn't explode into perfection after that. It never does. But it got real. And real was better than perfect. Noah and I found a rhythm, quiet mornings, chaotic dinners, art shows, road trips, nights spent debating over which candle smelled more like romantic forest. We didn't move in together. Not yet. We both agreed, this time no rushing. No blending lives until we were both ready. Some people didn't get that. My mom asked, so, where's this going? I told her forward. Just forward. And that was enough. One random Wednesday, I got a message from an art collective in Portland. They'd seen my Instagram. They were curating a gallery on transformation through trauma. They wanted me to showcase 5 pieces. At first, I laughed. Out loud. I wasn't a real artist. I was a heartbroken divorcee with a sketch pad and an emotional support latte addiction. But Noah looked me dead in the eye and said, you are a real artist. You just haven't given yourself permission to say it yet. So I said yes. And when opening night came, I stood in front of my work, 5 raw, brutal, bleeding pieces that traced my journey and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. I didn't just survive betrayal. I turned it into art. Into meaning. Into a goddamn exhibit. People cried in front of my work. They told me it felt like their pain on the canvas. One woman hugged me and whispered, you just helped me leave my cheating husband. I held her tight. Because I knew. I knew what that moment cost. That night, Noah took my hand, pulled me onto a quiet balcony behind the gallery, and kissed me like I was the only woman on earth. Then he reached into his pocket. My heart stopped. It wasn't a ring. It was a key. To my place, he said. No pressure. No expectations. Just, if you ever want to stay more than one night. I smiled. Took the key. Because it wasn't a proposal. It was a choice. And for the first time in a long, long time. I wanted to choose. A few weeks later, I saw Tyler. At a bookstore of all places. He was standing in the nonfiction aisle holding a self-help book like it might save his life. He looked older. Softer. Sadder. We locked eyes. He gave me a small nod. I nodded back. No drama. No scene. Just two people who had loved each other once. And broken apart. I didn't hate him. I didn't pity him either. I just let him go. Right there. In the middle of the aisle. I turned, walked away, and didn't look back. Because some chapters aren't meant to be reopened. And I had a whole book left to write. The night after I saw Tyler, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was upset, but because my mind was quiet. No racing thoughts. No imaginary confrontations. No bitter rewrites of the past. Just stillness. I laid in bed next to Noah, listening to his soft, even breaths, and I realized something that made my chest ache in the most beautiful way. I was at peace. Peace isn't flashy. It's not fireworks or dramatic music swelling in the background. It's drinking coffee without checking your phone for pain. It's being alone without feeling abandoned. It's trusting someone new and, more importantly, trusting yourself. For so long, I thought healing meant getting back to who I was before Tyler. But that version of me? She's gone. And honestly, I don't want her back. She was too willing to shrink for love. Too eager to excuse red flags. Too afraid of the truth. The woman I am now? She's bolder. Quieter in her strength. Unapologetic in her boundaries. She's not trying to be anyone's everything. She's just trying to be her own. Noah and I didn't have a fairy tale. We had hard conversations. Boundaries. Space when we needed it. But we also had trust. Laughter. Consistency. And above all, honesty. One morning, while folding laundry of all things, he turned to me and said, I used to think love had to be dramatic. Like, tear your shirt off, scream in the rain kind of thing. But this? Us? It's calm. It's real. I didn't know love could feel like home. I kissed him. Not because it was romantic, but because it was true. I went on to do more shows. More commissions. Even taught a weekend art class for women recovering from breakups. And let me tell you, those women? They were warriors. Every stroke of paint was a wound turned weapon. Every finished canvas was a survival story. We laughed. We cried. And we healed together. Sometimes people still ask me, do you ever regret it? Marrying him? Going through all that? And my answer is always the same. No. Because without that pain, I never would have found my truth. I never would have discovered my voice. I never would have met Noah or picked up a paintbrush again or learned to love myself in the truest, deepest way. That betrayal? It cracked me wide open. And from that crack, light came pouring in. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The pain? It didn't vanish. But it changed. It stopped controlling me. Stopped walking into every room before I did. Instead, it became something else. A scar. Faint. But there. A reminder of what I'd survived. Noah and I started traveling more. Not flashy trips. Just little escapes. Santa Fe for the art. Seattle for the bookstores. Nashville for the music. Everywhere we went, I carried a sketch pad. I stopped trying to draw perfectly. Instead, I captured moments. A kid with melted ice cream on his chin. A couple fighting on a park bench, still holding hands. A street musician playing like the world was listening even though no one was. It was like falling in love with life again. But this time with my eyes wide open. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I was invited to speak. A podcast called Broken and Rebuilt reached out. They wanted me to tell my story. Not the art part. Not the success. The betrayal. The breakdown. The rebuilding. At first, I said no. Because saying it out loud meant owning it in front of strangers. But something in me whispered, do it. So I did. And I didn't hold back. I told it all. The night I found them. The lies. The rage. The escape. The nights I couldn't breathe. The days I wanted to disappear. And how somehow through all of that I found myself. When the episode aired, I expected silence. Maybe judgment. Maybe pity. Instead, I got hundreds of messages. From women. From men. From people who'd never told anyone what they'd been through. One message stood out. I listened to your episode in my car. I was parked in front of my house, scared to walk in because I knew my partner was cheating. I knew it for months. But hearing you talk, it was like you gave me permission to choose myself. I walked in, packed my things, and left. Thank you. I sat on the floor, crying. Not because of the pain, but because of the power. My story had become someone else's survival kit. And that made every broken piece worth it. I started getting asked to speak more. At women's centers. At art workshops. Even a small TEDx event. I never pretended to be perfect. I never sugarcoated what happened. I just told the truth. Because someone has to. Someone has to say, you can be lied to, cheated on, shattered into pieces, and still come back stronger. You can walk in on your whole world falling apart, and still build something better. And you can love again. Not because you need someone, but because you choose to. They say life comes full circle. But sometimes it doesn't circle at all. Sometimes it spirals upward. A few months after the TEDx talk, I was invited to be part of a panel for a women's empowerment summit in Chicago. I almost said no. Imposter syndrome crept back in now. Who do you think you are? You're not a guru. You're just someone who got hurt and talked about it. But then I remembered something my therapist once told me. The wound isn't the whole story. The healing is. So I packed my bags, printed some of my latest artwork, and flew to Chicago. The event was packed. Hundreds of women. Survivors. Fighters. Quiet warriors. I sat next to CEOs, authors, nonprofit founders, and for a moment I felt out of place. Then they handed me the mic. I took a breath. Held it. Let it go. And I told them about the night I walked in on my husband. How my whole life collapsed in one moment. And how in the ruins I found my true self. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't glamorize the pain. I just told it real. At the end, the room was silent. Then someone stood. Then another. Then the applause roared like a wave crashing down. I stepped off the stage and sobbed in the hallway. Not because I was sad, but because it was finally real. I had turned my worst moment into someone else's roadmap. Back in Denver, Noah was waiting with flowers and Thai takeout. You looked like a damn superhero up there, he said, pulling me into his chest. I smiled into his neck. I felt like one. And I did. Not because I'd saved anyone, but because I'd saved myself. One night, after too much wine and a rerun of The Office, Noah asked, "You ever think about doing it again?" I blinked. Doing what? Marriage. The word hung in the air like a dare. I thought I'd panic. I didn't. I sat with it. Turned it over in my mind like a smooth stone. Marriage wasn't what scared me. Losing myself did. So I asked, would it look different this time? He took my hand. It'd look like two people promising to stay true to themselves first, then to each other. I nodded. That I could do. He didn't propose that night. There was no ring. No speeches. Just a conversation. A choice. And honestly, that meant more to me than any diamond ever could. I once thought being loved meant being chosen. Now I know being loved means being seen, heard, accepted, without conditions, without masks. And when you've been through hell and made it out whole, that kind of love feels like a revolution. The next few months were golden. Not perfect. Not without the occasional fight over whose turn it was to do dishes or whether cereal counts as dinner. It does. But golden in the way healing is golden. Like sunrise after a hurricane. Like laughter where there used to be silence. I was thriving. My art business had a waitlist. I was hosting local workshops and mentoring young women who'd gone through hell and come out blazing. One of them, Ava, hugged me after class and said, "You taught me that survival isn't enough. We get to live too." I went home that night and cried in the shower. Because if I'd had someone like that, someone honest, someone real, when I was in the thick of it, maybe I wouldn't have felt so alone. But maybe I had to go through it, so I could be that voice for someone else. And then it happened. I got an invitation in the mail. Tyler and Mark are getting married. You're invited. I laughed when I saw it. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity. It wasn't malicious. They probably meant well, but it felt like someone inviting you to the ribbon cutting of the house they burned yours down to build. I sat with the envelope for a long time. Showed it to Noah. He raised an eyebrow and said, "You going?" I smirked. "Hell no." Then I paused. "But I don't hate them." He nodded. "That's growth, babe." I didn't send back the RSVP. I didn't send flowers. I didn't post anything cryptic on Instagram. I just let it be. And that was my closure. One night, while painting in my studio, I came across an old canvas I'd never finished. It was from the before. Back when I still wore a ring and kept secrets from myself. It was dark. Heavy strokes. Angry reds. Cold blues. Unfinished. Just like I was back then. I stared at it for a while. Then slowly, I picked up my brush. I didn't erase the past. Didn't paint over it. I added to it. Warm golds. Vibrant orange. Hopeful white. Layer by layer. Stroke by stroke. Until the rage turned into something else. Something beautiful. When I was done, I signed it. To the woman I used to be, thank you for surviving. Because that's the truth. We all carry stories we never wanted. Wounds we didn't deserve. Endings we didn't choose. But we get to choose what comes next. We get to create from the ashes. To grow in the aftermath. To shine even if the light flickers sometimes. And no matter who hurt us, no one can take that away. It was a regular Tuesday when I got the call. The gallery downtown, the one I used to visit as a student, the one that once felt way too high above me, they wanted to feature me. A solo show. 10 pieces. My story on their walls. I dropped the phone. Literally. It hit the floor and bounced under the table. Noah ran in from the kitchen holding a wooden spoon like a weapon. Are we under attack? I just stared at him. Then burst out laughing. Babe, they want me. The Crawford Gallery. He blinked. Holy, wait, are you serious? I'm dead serious. He crossed the room in 2 steps, spun me around like a movie scene. I shrieked. We danced. We celebrated with frozen pizza and cheap champagne. It wasn't about the gallery. It was about what it meant. I wasn't just the woman who got cheated on. I was an artist. A storyteller. A survivor. And now? People were paying to see how I turned pain into paint. The show was called Aftermath. Each piece represented a stage of my journey. Discovery, a shattered bedroom door painted in jagged blacks and reds. Denial, a woman with blindfolds made of wedding vows. Escape, an open suitcase on fire. Reclamation, a spine made of gold stitched into torn skin. Love again, a warm, soft portrait of 2 silhouettes holding hands beneath a rain of stars. And the final one? Me. A mirror. Not painted. Not drawn. Just a real mirror in an ornate frame. So the person looking at it became the art. Because we're all the aftermath of something. And we're all still becoming. Opening night was packed. People cried. Hugged me. Shared their stories. And at the center of it all, Noah stood. Not overshadowing. Not clinging. Just there. Proud. Steady. Mine. As we left that night, hand in hand, he looked at me and said something I'll never forget. You didn't just rebuild. You built better. Stronger. You. Weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. Not typed. Handwritten. No return address. Just, Jessica. I stood in front of me for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just saw myself for the first time in a long time. Thank you. A stranger. I pressed the note to my chest. Smiled. And whispered, that's why. That's why I told the story. That's why I painted the pain. That's why I kept going even when everything in me wanted to stop. Because someone, somewhere, needed to feel seen. And now they did. After the show, everything changed. Not instantly. Not like a fairy tale. But like a tide slowly turning. I started getting speaking requests from universities. Women's panels. Art schools. Even therapy centers wanting me to talk to survivors of trauma. And every time I said the same thing. Your pain doesn't disqualify you from love. It prepares you for something deeper. Because I'd lived it. Every brushstroke, every sleepless night, every tear into a pillow no one else saw. One night, I got home from a panel and found Noah sitting on the balcony. The city lights flickered behind him, a soft breeze ruffling his shirt. He had something in his hands. I stepped closer. It was a tiny black velvet box. My breath caught. He looked up at me, not nervous, not performative. Just real. This isn't about fixing you, he said. You were never broken. This isn't about saving you. You saved yourself. This is about choosing you. Every day. For the rest of my life. He opened the box. Inside was a simple, stunning gold band. No diamond. Just a subtle engraving on the inside. Still becoming. I stared at it. Then him. Then I cried. Because this time. I wasn't saying yes out of fear. Not out of pressure. Not because it was expected. I said yes because I wanted to. Because I knew I could still be me inside a marriage. Because I wasn't losing myself, I was bringing myself fully. I whispered yes. And he pulled me in and held me like I was something sacred. Because I was. We didn't do a huge wedding. No Instagram perfect venue. No matching monogrammed robes. No choreographed dance. Just 20 people. A wildflower field outside Boulder. Barefoot vows. Laughter. Wine. Tears. And so much joy. I wore a pale yellow dress. He wore his father's watch. And when I said I do, I didn't feel like I was entering a new life. I felt like I was finally coming home to the one I built. I kept the last name Cole. Not because I wanted to hold on to the past, but because it was my name before any man touched it. And I'd earned the right to keep it. Besides, Noah didn't care. He said, you're not mine. You're yours. I'm just lucky you let me stay close. We laughed. We danced barefoot under string lights until midnight. It wasn't traditional. It wasn't perfect. It was us. And after everything I'd been through, that was all I ever wanted. Married life with Noah was gentle. That's the best word I have for it. Not because it was easy, but because it was safe. Not safe as in boring, but safe as in I can be all of me and not worry you'll run. We didn't fall into roles. We chose them. We cooked together, argued respectfully, took turns doing laundry, split bills, shared dreams. There were no secrets, no walking on eggshells, no wondering if the person across the table was someone I didn't really know. I used to think passion had to come with chaos. Now I knew real love doesn't burn you alive. It warms you back to life. On our honeymoon, if you could even call it that, we just road-tripped along the West Coast. I had a moment. We were in Big Sur, standing on a cliff, looking out at the ocean. The sky was orange and bleeding into lavender. Waves crashed beneath us, wind in our hair, and I thought, I made it, not just through the divorce, not just through heartbreak, but through myself. All the guilt, the shame, the endless questions of why didn't I see it, the lies I believed, the dignity I sacrificed, the love I gave to someone who didn't know what to do with it. I walked through it all, and now I was standing on the other side, not bitter, not broken, but reborn. I turned to Noah. He had his arms out, letting the wind hit his face like a kid in a dream. He turned and looked at me and smiled like I was a sunrise. And I thought, this is the kind of love that finds you when you finally love yourself enough to stop chasing pain. We started talking about the future, not in checklists, not in Pinterest boards, but in feelings. Would we ever want to buy a house? Where did we want to grow old? Would we get a dog, a garden, matching rocking chairs? We didn't rush answers, because we finally understood something that took us both a lifetime to learn. You don't need a perfect plan when you have an honest partner. And that's what we were. Partners. In laughter. In mess. In mornings with burnt toast and tangled blankets. Partners in life. I kept writing. Kept painting. Even started a memoir. The title? I Walked In. It wasn't just about that night. It was about every room I'd ever walked into afraid. And walked out of stronger. It was about betrayal. But more than that, it was about becoming. Because that's what this whole damn journey had been. A slow, painful, beautiful, relentless becoming. And the woman I became, she didn't just survive heartbreak. She used it. To build. To teach. To love. To live. 1 year later, I got a call I didn't expect. It was Tyler. His name lit up on my phone like a ghost knocking on the front door of a house I'd already burned to the ground. I stared at it for a long time. Not out of fear. Not out of curiosity. Out of peace. Because for the first time ever, I wasn't afraid of what he might say. I answered. Hi, I said. Flat, but not cold. He paused. Hey, I didn't think you'd pick up. I sat down calmly. Then why'd you call? Another pause. A breath. I saw your gallery show online. Aftermath. A friend sent it to me. And I wanted to say it's beautiful. And I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry. Again. For everything. There was no quiver in his voice. No defensiveness. Just quiet. I waited. You didn't just tell your story, he continued. You elevated it. You turned something awful into something meaningful. I think you saved people. I closed my eyes. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because it felt like the final page of a book closing itself. Thank you, I said simply. That means something. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he added. I cut him off. I already forgave you, Tyler. I just didn't do it for you. He was silent. I could feel the weight of that sentence through the phone. I'm happy you found someone, I said. And I hope you're treating him better than you treated me. I am, he said quickly. I promise you I am. Good. That's all I ever wanted. For you to stop hiding. And stop hurting people in the process. There was a beat. Then, you're the strongest person I've ever known, Jess. I didn't need to hear that anymore. But I let him say it. Take care of yourself, Tyler. You too. Click. I sat in silence after the call, staring out the window at a quiet, cloudless sky. And then I smiled. because that was it. The final ember. The last whisper of the old story. Extinguished. I told Noah about the call later that night. He didn't get jealous. He didn't get weird. He just nodded and asked, "You okay?" "I'm more than okay," I said. "I'm free." He wrapped his arms around me as we stood in the kitchen. The hum of the fridge. The soft rain tapping the windows. A moment so simple. So pure. I could barely breathe from how full it felt. I looked up at him and whispered, "This is the life I never knew I could have." And he said, "That's because you were never allowed to imagine it." And now I was, not just imagining, but living it. The days began to slow. Not because life was dull, but because I was finally present enough to notice them. The way sunlight filtered through our bedroom curtains at 7:13 every morning. The little crease Noah got between his eyebrows when he was focused. The quiet satisfaction of a clean paintbrush after hours of color and chaos. This was the kind of life that doesn't get a million likes. But it means something, because it's real. And after living a lie, real is the most luxurious thing in the world. I started volunteering twice a week at a women's shelter downtown. Not to be anyone's savior, just to show up. Sometimes I taught art. Sometimes I just listened. One night, a woman named Rena asked me quietly, "How did you know you were strong enough to leave?" I didn't say something poetic. I didn't say something dramatic. I just told the truth. I didn't. I left anyway, because that's what courage is. Not being sure, but moving anyway. She cried. I held her hand. And in that moment I realized this was the legacy I wanted. Not fame. Not followers. Impact. Real, human connection that turns wounds into wisdom. The memoir was finished. I walked in, went to print 6 months later. A small publisher picked it up. No massive advance. No book tour. But when I held the first copy in my hands, I wept. Because it wasn't just a book. It was a testament. A timestamp of the girl I was, and the woman I became. Noah planned a surprise for the launch. He cleared out the living room, set up candles, string lights, little post-it notes on the walls, each with a quote from my book. He made a cake, badly, caved in the middle. I loved it. He handed me a marker. "Sign your first copy." I looked at the blank page inside the cover, then wrote, "For every woman who thought she couldn't survive it, you already did. Now go build something from it." People started messaging me again. Not just "you inspired me," but "I finally left. I packed my bags last night. I walked in, and I walked out." Those words felt like a ripple, a wave, a rising. I wasn't just healing anymore. I was helping others heal. And isn't that the most powerful thing a broken heart can become? A lantern for someone else's dark. Late one night, Noah and I lay on the floor of the studio, surrounded by dried paint and empty wine glasses. He looked at me and asked, "What's next?" I turned my head, smiled. "Anything I want." Because after everything, I wasn't just free from the past. I was finally free to dream again. It was a rainy Sunday when I got the letter. Handwritten. No return address. But the handwriting, I recognized it immediately. Denise, Tyler's mom. I hesitated before opening it. Not out of fear, but out of respect. For how far I'd come. For the version of me that used to ache for her approval. Inside, a single page. "Jessica, I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to say thank you. You may not know this, but your grace after everything changed how I saw my own son. Not in a bad way, but in a clearer one. And how I saw myself, too. I should have reached out sooner. I should have checked on you. I didn't know how. I was ashamed. But I followed your work. Your words. Your strength. And I'm in awe of the woman you've become. I hope life is good to you. I hope it stays that way forever. With love, Denise." I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it carefully, slid it into my journal. Not everything has to be resolved. Not every person has to be part of your next chapter. But forgiveness doesn't always need a reply. Sometimes it just needs acceptance. That same afternoon, I got a call from a reporter with the New York Times. She was doing a piece on art born from survival. She'd heard of me through the gallery circuit. She wanted to interview me. I blinked. Me? She laughed. Yes, you. The girl who walked in, walked out, and built an empire of paint and purpose. I agreed. The article came out 3 weeks later. My name, my face, my story front and center. From betrayal to brilliance. The art of Jessica Cole. I read it with trembling hands. Because for so long, I thought my story would bury me. But now, it was lifting people. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't just a survivor. I was an example. Proof that the worst thing that ever happened to you can become the best thing you ever did with your life. That night, Noah and I sat on the rooftop of our building, wrapped in blankets, a bottle of red wine between us. We watched the stars, the city breathing, the quiet. Can I tell you something? I asked. He turned to me. Always. I used to think the moment I walked in on Tyler was the end of my life. He waited. But now, I think it was the moment my real life began. He didn't say anything. He just pulled me in closer. And the silence said everything. Because he knew. He felt it too. This wasn't just a happy ending. It was a new beginning. And this time, I was writing it myself. 2 years after the night that changed everything, I stood in front of a crowd of over 500 people. A women's leadership conference in Austin. The theme, Reclaiming Your Narrative. I was the keynote speaker. Me, Jessica Cole. A woman who once sat in a parked car, staring at the door of a lie she couldn't yet walk through. I took the stage, looked out at the sea of faces, some smiling, some already crying. And I told my story. I told them about the betrayal, the silence, the unraveling, the shame of not being enough for a man who was never telling the truth. The way I thought my life had ended with one slammed bedroom door. Then I told them what came after. The art, the healing, the rebuilding, the choice to no longer be defined by what happened to me, but by what I chose to do with it. I ended with this. You are not the worst thing someone did to you. You are not your broken parts. You are what you create from it. And no one can take that away. The applause was thunderous. But it wasn't for me. It was for every woman in that room who had ever felt invisible, used, discarded, and chose to rise anyway. Afterward, as the crowd thinned, a young woman approached me. Tears in her eyes. Journal clutched to her chest. I left him last week, she whispered. Because of your book. I hugged her. Held her tightly. And I felt it again. That quiet knowing. My pain had purpose. It wasn't just a scar. It was a signal flare. A way to say to others in the dark. You're not alone. There's life on the other side. Now, years later, I don't wake up thinking about that night anymore. I wake up in a home I helped build. Next to a man who doesn't just love me, but sees me. I drink coffee on the porch. Paint barefoot. Laugh easily. Cry openly. Dream wildly. I'm no longer afraid of what people think of me. I'm more interested in what I think of myself. And you know what? I like her. The woman I am now. She's fierce. She's soft. She's been broken wide open and kept going. She's not perfect. But she's real. And if I could go back and whisper anything to the girl standing in that bedroom doorway watching everything she knew fall apart, I'd say this. You're about to lose everything, and that's the best thing that could ever happen to you. Because what came next wasn't a tragedy. It was the truth. And truth is where everything beautiful begins.